I'm Tori from the Quilt Patch by Tori, and today we're doing a coffee chat on our Coffee Chats with Quilters with Jennifer Lopez. And coffee chats are all about finding out who the quilter is behind the quilts. So let's go ahead and bring her on. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good. I'm very excited to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm excited you're here. So our first question is coffee or tea?
Oh, definitely tea. I've got my Dunkin' Donuts green tea. I can't live without it.
Oh, that's a first, a Dunkin' Donuts tea.
Well, I'm from New England, so Dunkin' Donuts is pretty much mandatory.
So where are you from in New England?
So I'm in Rhode Island. I was originally from Massachusetts, and I just moved to Rhode Island a couple months ago, and I really love it. It's beautiful. It's quiet. And we have some awesome quilt stores in Rhode Island, so that's pretty exciting.
Do you get to see the beach often? I'm from the West Coast, so I don't know how the beaches are up there.
You know, I'm like working all the time, so I don't get to go to the beach much, but I would like to. And it is nearby, so hopefully soon.
Awesome. Okay. Do you have a favorite childhood memory?
A favorite childhood memory. Well, I will tell you a sewing related childhood memory. And that is I grew up in New Hampshire, but my parents had a summer home in Maine on a little island called Southport Island. And they went there all the time. And when I was a kid, I was really into sewing. I was really into making stuffed animals. And then later I got into making clothes and stuff like that, even when I was, as young as junior high. And I really, it was fun going up to Maine. It was pretty and everything, but it was kind of a bummer because the sewing machine was in New Hampshire. So I couldn't really sew anything. And this really bummed me out. And one day, my grandmother came over, and my grandmother is famous for like picking up junk on the side of the road. She loved flea markets, antique shows, yard sales, especially because everything's cheap at a yard sale. She was very excited to come over one day, and she had brought me a sewing machine that she picked up at a yard sale for $5. And it turns out it was this beautiful vintage Singer red eye. I don't know if you've seen those ones. They have like two big red like ellipses on the front of the machine, and it looks kind of like an eye. That's why they call it the red eye. And I opened it up, and on the inside there's still the original instruction manual from 1918. So,
Wow.
and she was so excited. I got this for $5, and it turns out I didn't realize until I was an adult that this was like a real find, And so it actually was a treadle machine that somebody had converted to electric because they sold like these little kits that you could strap an engine onto the back and make it electric. And so I was thrilled then. I had a sewing machine up in Maine, and I went crazy. I sewed everything. So now I could sew at home, and as soon as I got to Maine, I could sew with the machine my grandma gave me. I still have it. And so that was a really fun thing that happened. I was around 12 when that happened.
Awesome. I remember when we were growing up, I have a twin. I say we a lot. But when we were growing up, we attempted to make a teddy bear one time, and it came out really bad. How did you learn how to do stuffed animals?
Well, I loved stuffed animals, and I had a lot of them. So I basically learned how to make them just by looking at how they're made, and just sort of trial and error. I remember I started sewing stuffed animals when I was only like 4 or 5. I was like sewing things out of felt, because my grandma would always give me scraps of fabric and stuff, and they were really terrible, and they were just like put together with a running stitch, but they looked cute. And my mom claims that I was always getting into her sewing projects. Like she wanted to sew, and I would always be getting into her projects. So she would show me how to sew, and she showed me at a really, really young age, just so that I could keep busy with my own projects. So it just basically started out sewing little squares together out of felt, and then I started getting fake fur. And whenever I go into like Joann's these days, I'm always just stupefied by how beautiful the fake fur is and how many colors they have. When I was a kid, you couldn't find fake fur anywhere, and it was really, really hard to come by. And every now and then you could come by some scraps, again, my grandmother used to go to this coat factory up in Maine, and they had fake fur that was like left over from the linings and stuff. And then they had these scrap bins that you could get scraps by the pound for something really cheap. I forget what it was. So I got my fake fur mostly from scraps and factory remnants and stuff like that. But like you couldn't just go into a fabric store and buy like a yard of purple fake fur like you can today. I would have lost my mind if I could have done that back then. But so basically, I just looking at stuffed animals, seeing how they're made, and like there's a couple of skills you need to learn how to do. Is like how to make a circle, like so. I made this pattern. This is one of my sewing patterns, and this is a little beach ball, and you can see it's a perfect circle. And all you need to know how to do is make this wedge shape. And there's a trick to how to make it turn out to be a perfect circle. But I mean, doing things like that, learning how to make the right shaped wedge to make a circle is a stuffed animal skill. Once you do that, you can make anything. You just put ears on it, and it's a pig, or tail on it, and it's an elephant. So, and then also learning how to make like cylinders and stuff like that. So once you sort of figure out the basic shapes, you can just start putting stuff together.
It blows my mind. 3D, like I'm really good. Well, I'm getting better at least with flat 2D things. And then I try to make it 3D. I've been trying to make a quilted coat for 7 months.
Uh-oh.
And it's so intimidating to me to try to put a sleeve together because it's 3D. I'm just like, I don't know if I'm going to do this right.
Well, you could buy a pattern for a regular coat and then use a regular, like make the quilted part and like the flat part and then use a regular pattern. That might help.
Yeah, I do have a regular. I haven't printed it out yet because, like I said, I've been intimidated by it. But I got the pieces quilted. I just have to get over my fear of 3D and try it.
Well, use some ugly fabric first, just in case it goes bad.
There you go. That's what I should do. I'm like looking at my stash over here like that. I could use that.
No, nothing from the stash. Use like an old sheet or something gross that you don't care if it's ruined.
That's a good idea.
Like you could go to Goodwill and buy sheets. And
Yeah.
I'm also the master of finding stuff cheap. So I mean, I blog every other Wednesday on the C&T Publishing blog, and I'm one of those. That was one of the things I talked about one day. It was like how to find fabric cheap, and like people overlook Goodwill, but it's a great place to go. Like if you want to make a dress, go to Goodwill and buy a dress that's 3 sizes too big for you, and then that gives you stuff to cut down. Like you can refashion it to fit you, and you have lots of fabric to work with. And if you buy it really big, you're going to cut a lot of it off, and then you'll have extra fabric. You can make like pockets and bows and ties and all kinds of stuff. So
That's a great idea. I'm just like, wow, that is a good idea. It's like I've got projects in the back of my head, but with the toddler, I don't really get to a lot of things. So I'm making notes.
Okay, well, you can do it later.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so we talked about childhood memories. So do you have any hobbies outside of quilting?
Well, funny you should ask. So one of my hobbies that I've always enjoyed since I was a kid was drawing, and I've always been a doodler. And that sort of goes along with the making stuffed animals because, I like to draw animals and stuff and think about like how do you make a 3D animal 2D and then try to make a pattern, make a 2D thing 3D. So it kind of goes both ways. I loved drawing when I was a kid. I always drew something. I drew for the junior high newspaper. I drew for my high school newspaper. I drew for my college humor magazine. Then when I went to work in corporate America, I used to be a software developer and then a software development manager. I drew a comic called BizTunes, so I do corporate comics. And I've sort of transitioned out of the corporate world, and I started drawing comics about quilting. And I just did it because all the cartoonists say, well, how do you have a successful cartoon or successful comic strip? And they say, just draw what you know. I'm like, well, I'm like sewing all the time. So I started drawing cartoons about sewing, and I invented a comic called By the Yard. And so By the Yard has been going on for 3 years now. I publish it every week on Wednesday, and it's part of that C&T Publishing blog post that I do every other Wednesday. And then I decided, like, I want to put out these comics. I want to get them out there. Like, how can people see them? And then I got an idea to make a calendar. And some people say nobody likes calendars anymore because we have cell phones. Not true. People love calendars. If you go on, like, any bookstore, they're full of calendars and special interest ones, dogs, cats, everything. I'm like, why not quilting cartoons? So I came up with this. I'll show you this year's calendar. this is, let's see if I can show this on screen. This is this year's calendar, the by the yard uh, wall calendar for quilters, and I'll just read the comic for you. So there's a picture of the girl in the middle. That's me. I'm trying to make it not be shiny. You know, I don't
You're
know.
doing
I don't know
pretty
if you
good.
can see it.
There you go.
And she's buying fabric at the fabric store, and you can see there's a big price tag with $3 signs. So she's buying this expensive fabric, and she says to her significant other, "I just don't want to look back on my life and think I should have bought that fabric." And this comic actually comes from real life. It kind of pained me to write that comic, but I decided I'm going to try to crush this terrible memory I have by making fun of it. But I had this horrible thing that happened when I was trying to make my wedding dress in the 80s. And I went to the fabric store. I didn't have a car. I had to take the train, and then I had to walk, and I finally got there. I went to Chinatown in Boston because I was living in Cambridge. And Chinatown used to have these really great fabric stores. Found this beautiful French lace with pearls and all kinds of ribbons embroidered on it. It was so beautiful, right? Remember, this is the 80s, okay? So I was going to make this top out of all this lace. It was so beautiful, but it was like $100 a yard, and I only had like, $75 because I thought that was going to be enough. That shows you how little I knew, right? And I was like, crap, I can't buy it. So I jump back on the train. I go home, get more money. Because remember, back then, it's like people didn't use like ATM cards all the time. People use cash, So I had to go home, get more money. Came back, and I kid you not, I absolutely kid you not, I'm standing there with this hard, cold cash. I'm going to spend like $300 on all this lace fabric. And there's this woman in front of me in line who's buying every last inch of it. And I was like, no. And
Oh no.
it became evident from her conversation with the clerk. Like, the clerks sort of do playful banter with you, say like, oh, what are you making? She's like, oh, I make a wedding dress for a customer. And I'm like, she's not even making it for herself. She's making it for a customer. And she's a grumpy old lady. She doesn't even care about this fabric. This is my dream fabric. And she's wasting it on her client who she clearly doesn't care about. And I just literally started crying,
Oh.
And I went home crying. I couldn't get my fabric. And I searched high and low for that fabric. I could never find it. I ended up using something else and hating it.
Oh, no.
And so that comic was about, and that was literally 30 years ago, and I'm still bummed out about it.
Yeah.
So that comic is about, like, if you see something that you love, just buy it, because you won't get a chance to buy it later. So anyways, this calendar, we've had it for 3 years now. This is the third year, and every month has like a fun comic, and then at the bottom, every month has a fun holiday that's about quilting. And so, like, for January, the fun holiday is local quilt shop day. These are all real holidays. I'm not making this stuff up, I promise. Yeah. And that is going to be next year. It's going to be on Saturday, the 22nd of January. And local quilt shop day is a day that quilt shops celebrate by having sales and events and quilt alongs. And it's just basically a way to get involved with your local quilt shop and help support them, because they're a small business and they need you.
Yes.
So
local quilt shop.
So that's pretty fun. And the comic also evolved into, we have fun greeting cards too. This one is talking about the couple is it riding in the car, and the truck is stopped, and the girl's running in, and the husband is in the car looking at his phone saying, "What? Another quilting shop? It looks like it's stuck on GPS is stuck on quilt shop mode." And that's a joke that came out of real life from driving to too many quilt stores, and there's 12 of them. So you can see them all at bytheyardcomics.com. So I just thought that was another fun way to share quilting humor with your friends. Like how you're trying to buy somebody a birthday card or whatever, and they're pretty generic, but quilters are all alike. They all buy way too much fabric. They have more fabric than they could ever use. They all will kill you if you use their scissors for the wrong thing. So I just thought, let's use some of these quilting stereotypes, to like be fun and share humor with other quilters.
I love it. I love your comic. I laugh at every single one of them.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I really do.
Yeah. All right. So, you answered all my questions for that. It's so fun to hear about, especially the stories behind, like, they're based off of real life, and that quilter in the comic is you, which is great to know.
Oh, and well, so I'll show you another one. So this one is the quilter and her boyfriend, who's a train geek, like a model train guy. And they're at the fabric store. This was also ripped from the headlines of my life. This one legitimately happened. We're in the fabric store, and I see it was this snowflake fabric that I wanted to make some Christmas thing out of. And I was just going to buy 1 yard. And he's like, really? Just 1 yard? And he goes, you should get 3 or 4. And, quilting fabric's really expensive, so I was hesitant to buy it. But when I got home, I wrote this comic where the boyfriend says, babe, what is it? Let me see. Oh, only 4 yards? You should just buy the whole bolt. And then she says, you bought another train today, didn't you? Because in real life, my boyfriend is a model train enthusiast. And so I was thinking the only reason why he's telling me to go crazy buying fabric is he must have bought another train. And the thing that's really funny about the train comic, that just came up again out of real life. And I noticed that there was a lot of parallels between his hobby and my hobby. Like quilters, they know where all the quilt stores are, and they go to them just for fun, even if they don't need anything. They have tons and tons of fabric, more fabric that they can use. And it turns out the train guys are the same way. They have more trains than they could ever use. They have more track, more wheels, more everything, and they're always going to the train shops just to see what's new. And so I noticed that, we have a lot of stuff that's parallel about our hobbies. So when I came up with the name By the Yard, it was really intended to be like a double entendre, by the yard meaning by the yard of fabric, and then by the yard, like by the train yard, because there's some train jokes in there. And you might think, well, quilting and trains, that doesn't go together. You'd be surprised how many quilting/train enthusiast couples have contacted me saying, we're a quilt and train couple too. And I was thinking, it must be something about our obsessive personality types that attracts each other. And it's not always the lady that's the quilter and the man that's the train enthusiast. We've got a couple of By the Yard fans where the gal is the train enthusiast and the husband is the quilter. So that was kind of fun. We actually had a couple contact us that the woman was an engineer, the person that drives the train, and then the husband was a quilter. So we also do some more train-specific humor too, and By the Yard is in Model Railroader magazine, which is a magazine just for model railroaders. And we just got our first comic in there for this month's issue. So if there are any train fans out there, check out Model Railroader.
Yeah, that's amazing. So my husband actually paints miniatures, and there's a lot of parallels there too. You're talking about a lot of tracks and wheels. He's got a lot of paint and paintbrushes. But he has grandstands on his desk, and they're miniatures, so they're little pots. But there's grandstands of little pots of paint just all over. He's surrounded by them.
Just like quilters, right? They're like, I need green fabric. And well, don't you have like 50 greens? No, not the right shade. I bet he's that way with his paint, right? He has to have the special shade of green, not just any green, but the special green.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, why don't you mix it? I can't mix it. You can mix it a little bit. You can't mix like that. You can't do that. Because
you can never mix the same one twice. So, he makes a valid point.
I guess that's true. I didn't think about that, but I guess that's true.
Well, on our Facebook page, we get a lot of comments from all kinds of crafting enthusiasts and people who are obsessed about different things. Like one woman wrote in, oh my God, that's my husband, except with his cigars. Or another one is with his tractors, because my guy's into tractors too. We have so many tractors. And then, fishing stuff. And so basically By the Yard is really just about like people who are hobby fanatics, and a lot of people appreciate the jokes because the two characters in the comics, they're just fanatics about whatever it is that they're doing. They do it to excess. On last year's calendar, instead of the quilting holiday, we had funny quotes, and one of them was a quote where it was, if it's worth doing to excess. So I think that summarizes the quilting mindset.
I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and keep going. So how did you get into quilting?
Well, quilting was kind of a funny story for me. So I already told you that I'd been sewing stuffed animals and clothes since I was a kid. And when I was in high school, I grew up in the 80s, so that was a great time to be making your own clothes. I mean, I made everything that looked like Prince, the purple guy. And I made purple paisley velvet jacket for school, and crazy stuff like that. And so I was really, really into making clothes. But then as time went on and I had kids and everything, I stopped making clothes. And also making clothes has become horribly expensive. But anyways, my best friend was about to adopt a baby, and they knew when the baby was arriving, and I was like, I gotta have a gift. This is my best friend in the whole world. And I thought about making her a dress or something. I'm like, well, I already had kids by then, so I knew that the dress was only going to fit for like 2 seconds, and then she was going to outgrow it. I'm like, I want something better, something that's more of a keepsake, because this is my best friend in the whole world, and I want like a special thing for her. And so I made her, I wanted to make a quilt. So I go to actually, I didn't even decide it until I went to the fabric store. I went to the fabric store, and I'm looking around, and I always used to just walk right past the quilting section, and I'm like, here, I've been overlooking this section of the store all this time. Let's see what's going on here. And I was rummaging through the patterns, and I found Eleanor Burns's book, Quilt in a Day, the log cabin version. And I was like, that's it. I can make a quilt. And so I'll show you. I don't have the quilt, but I have a quilt. I made a quilt for my son afterwards. I'll show it to you.
All right.
This is almost the same quilt. I made hers pink, but mine is blue. It's just a log cabin. And it has this little cute cow jumping over the moon, like these little cows jumping over the moon with little babies sleeping on them. Yeah. I got this exact fabric in pink for my friend. So, I did not know how to make a quilt. So I bought all the fabric, I bought the book, and it says quilt in a day. And I just laughed at that. I'm like, no way. I'm not going to be able to make this in a day. And of course, it took way longer. So I made that quilt for Little Melody, and Little Melody is about to turn 18. So that was a while ago. And after I made that quilt, I was like, oh my God, that was really fun. And, because I'm an engineer, I'm a software engineer by training. And so the whole idea about all the math and everything in quilts and the measuring and the precision, some people find that unappealing, but I found it very appealing. And so then I made a quilt for my mom, and every time somebody in the family had a baby, I'd make them a quilt. And well, it was a very, very slippery slope after that. So it's all because of that little baby. Aww. Oh, and a funny thing is that I mentioned that to the mom recently, and she said the little girl still has that quilt on her bed today. Yay. And she's like getting ready for college, and she still has the quilt on her bed. So I was so excited when I heard that.
That's amazing. I know it's always nice to hear when people actually use the quilts and really keep a hold of them.
And my friend is like, oh, it's so beautiful. And I said, don't worry, let the baby make a mess of it, let the baby barf on it, that's what it's for.
Yeah, meant to be used.
That's right. So that's how I got into it. And most of the time I was just making log cabin quilts because I love log cabin. It's my favorite design, even though it's really simple, it's my favorite. And then I started playing around with designing my own stuff, and starting designing my own quilts and patterns and stuff like that. So, like I said, slippery slope.
Well, especially if you love the math of it, I feel like designing patterns would naturally come about.
Yes, it's true. Fiddling around with graph paper. And I'll tell you a funny story. Very weird coincidence, okay? This was before I started quilting, but I told you I was a software developer, and my very first job when I got out of college was working for a company called Papyrus Design Group, and they made software for educational software for K through 12. They also made video games too, but I was working in the educational software group. And I was working on this product called Math and More, and it was to teach kids K through 2, teach them math, right? And this was a long time ago. This was in 1993, right? And so we were developing for the PS2. I mean, I don't know if anybody out there even remembers the PS2, but it was like this little cube thing, and it was very popular in schools because it was all self-contained, kind of like the original Apple, Yeah. And I was assigned 2 games, and one of my games was called Quilts. I kid you not. And the premise of the game was that there would be a pattern that would be presented on the screen, and you have all these little tiles as a student, and your job was to pull these tiles out of these virtual little drawers and either rotate them or move them side to side to match the pattern. And then you would, like, some of the patterns would repeat, and some of the patterns would be like, like inverted or upside down, and so you had to pattern match by rotating or translating these little cubes. And I thought that was really fun. I loved that app, and I finished it, and I was like, that was the first thing I ever made as a software developer. And then years and years later, I end up being a quilt nut. And the sad irony is I don't have a copy of that game anymore because, it ran on Microsoft DOS, like even before Windows, and I had a CD of it in the back of a drawer somewhere, and I lost it, and I'm really sad that I lost it. But that was a fun overlap with my day job, and later getting into quilting. They weren't even near close to each other at all in terms of years, but it's kind of a fun history.
Yeah, definitely. I know that when I was a kindergarten teacher, we had a software program that did a very similar thing, where they were matching patterns, and I would sit there and be like, "That looks like a quilt." Like
Yes.
a quilt block with the triangles the way that's, and then one time it was a Ohio Star,
Oh, really?
and I was like,
Wow.
that's an Ohio Star, like I know what that is.
That's awesome.
It's fun to
So
see.
there's patterns everywhere. I think that's the other thing that's really fun about quilting is that there's patterns everywhere. There's patterns in brick walls, there's patterns on subway floors, there's patterns. I remember there was this awesome pattern. I used to work at CVS, and CVS corporate here in Rhode Island, and they have this crazy red tile in their kitchen. And I was taking pictures of it, and I was thinking people are going to think I'm nuts. They're thinking I'm taking a picture of the soda fountain, but I'm really just taking a picture of this cool, tile wall. So there's really inspiration all around us. And if you're ever like looking for an idea, just go out and look around at architecture or nature, and you'll get inspired.
Definitely. I was actually taking pictures. We went, my family rented a beach house for a family reunion, and the
Hmm.
rugs that they had decorating were just awesome. I was taking pictures to like save for later for quilt inspiration because they were so cool. Most of them were geometric shapes, so they would be really
Hmm.
easy to translate. I was just like, oh.
Well, that's great.
Now I was walking around taking pictures of rugs, and they're like, "What are you doing?" I was like, it's cool. Like I'm just saving it. Don't mind me."
Well, you gotta try to record these things somehow, because one thing I noticed as a quilter and also as a cartoonist is like you're just bombarded with ideas all the time. And then later I'm like, oh, I had this great idea. What was it? I can't remember. So I carry these little notebooks around with me everywhere. I have one in the car. I have one on my desk. Either try to take a picture with your phone or try to write something down in your notebook, and try to remember it for later. And then when you're ever stuck, you just go back and flip through your notebook. And a lot of times you'll be like, oh yeah, I'd already forgotten about that. So, I mean, we're literally bombarded with all these great ideas every day. We just need to remember them somehow. So write them down, keep a notebook, and it'll help you get inspired.
I totally agree. Okay, so I've got to check that one off. So tell me, you did tell me about your first quilt for your best friend. So what are your favorite style of quilts or quilting technique?
Well, I already mentioned that log cabin is my favorite block design. It's kind of old timey,
Very
but
versatile.
it's very versatile. And the thing that's neat about it is, it's all, well, you can make any size strips, but you can use the 2.5 inch strips, which are pretty easy to create. There's a lot of 2.5 inch rulers. You can just go zip them out and stuff. So, I was really motivated by this 2.5 inch thing. And so I started coming up with new designs. I'll show you some cute bags that I made. I mentioned that I also designed sewing patterns. So my comic is by the Art Comics, but my sewing patterns are so fun. It's at sewfun.com. And I'll show you these cute bags. And these particular bags are Halloween themed, but these ones are all made out of the 2.5 inch blocks. So they're supposed to be Halloween bags, but they could also be other things. Like this one is the zombie. See how he's all made out of 2.5 inch blocks? He's got the little crazy eyes, and he's got like a pink batik for his brain, because he's a zombie. And and it's basically just 7 blocks across and 7 blocks up, so it makes, once you do the seams a 1/4 inch, it makes a 14 inch block. It's the perfect size for a bag. It could be a pillow. I've even had some folks take these and make quilts out of them, because why not? Once you figure out how to do one block, all you have to do is make a bunch of them.
Yeah, it was cool.
So So, and also graph paper, easy to design, you know. So that there's a zombie. We have, and your zombies are very popular in culture, so you don't have to make it a Halloween bag. You know, you could, this has Halloween fabric, but you could do like a cool cityscape fabric like graffiti or a city street or something and make like, you know, a zombie book bag or something like that. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
Halloween. The same thing for aliens. I love aliens. I love that TV show, Ancient Aliens. I watch it all the time.
Oh
So
yeah.
this one's really simple. It's just, again, just the 2.5-inch blocks, and the only angles that you have to cut are a 45-inch angle. Really easy. So, and then we have a Frankenstein monster. You know, so he's got a big square head, and he's got like the big forehead with the hair. You know, he's
Is it
got the
cute?
sleepy eyes. And the fun thing about these bags is like there's a lot of common elements. Like the eyes are all the same on all the different bags. They're just different colors. So you can get different looks depending on what colors you use. And oh, here's a fun one that's also fun in popular culture. It can be a Halloween bag or it can be, you know, a regular bag. This one's a vampire.
It's so
He's a
cute.
little evil, but he's kind of like cute evil, you know?
Yeah.
So I debated on whether or not he should have red tipped fangs, and I decided, what the heck? If people don't like that, they can just make him white. But I thought, you know, he was drinking Kool-Aid. All right, he wasn't eating anybody. He was just drinking Kool-Aid.
There you go.
So and then of course, no Halloween collection would be complete without werewolf. My boyfriend thinks he looks like a dog. I don't think he looks like a dog, but you know, maybe dog fans could make one of these. I don't know. And then I got two more. Of course, no Halloween
Oh,
collection would be complete without the little ghost. How cute
I
is
really like
he?
that one too.
And everybody likes the ghost. He's one of the most popular ones, and he's got like the little. These are just half square triangles. That's all they are. It's just a row of 5 little half square triangles. And actually, when I said it was 7 blocks, I'm sorry, it's 7 blocks if you include the border. But the little character is only 5 blocks. So, and then we have, of course, a pumpkin. This
I'm
is a cute
pumpkin.
pumpkin. You could put these the vampire eyes on the pumpkin and make him evil, you know. But this is a happy pumpkin. And so I also have a cat one too, but I gave the cat one away because I did the photo shoot for this pattern cover. I did the photo shoot in this farm in Massachusetts, and the lady was so nice to let me do the photo shoot. I gave her the cat bag as a thank you gift. But it's on the website. You can see it at sofun.com. But anyways, all 2.5-inch strips. So I sort of took my love for the log cabin block, and what I loved about it was the strips. It was so easy to do, and all these bags are made with just the strips. And you either have to just use a regular square, or sometimes you do the half square triangle with the 45-inch cut, and that's it. So it's super easy
Yeah.
to make these really fun faces.
And they're simple and they're adorable.
They're very cute. So, and they could definitely be for other things. Like the cat one, it doesn't have to be for Halloween. A lot of people like cats. And like I said, the zombie and the alien can just be like popular culture references, or even the vampire. You know, there's all those vampire shows now.
Yeah.
It would be so cute to make a vampire like a book bag or something with like a night sky fabric or something like that.
No, I agree.
So,
Those are really fun. Thank you for sharing those.
well, thanks. Thanks for letting me.
So do you have a favorite quilt?
A favorite quilt that I've made, or a favorite quilt ever?
Both.
Well, my favorite quilt was probably the log cabin one that I made for, you know, the one I made for my son is the same one that I made for my friend, you know, just because of like nostalgia. But like my favorite quilt in terms of coolness is oh my gosh, I'm not prepared. I don't know the name of it. There's a quilt pattern out there. I think it's called Labyrinth or something like that, and it looks like a 3D maze, and people make it into a like a queen or king size top, and it's only 3 colors, but it looks super 3D. I'm almost sure that it's called Labyrinth,
I think
but
you're right.
I haven't made it yet. But I've been dying to make it because, again, it's only, I think it uses wider strips than 2.5-inch. I think they're maybe like 4 or 5-inch, but they just use strips and then at the 45-degree angle, and it looks exactly like a maze. And you do it in these really bold colors. You do it like in a really light color, like a white or a beige, and then a really super dark color, and then a medium color to do the shadows.
Mhm.
And it looks so 3D. It looks just like a real 3D maze, and I can't wait to do it. So
I've seen those, and I think you're right. I think it's called Labyrinth. It messes with
yeah.
my eyes. I'm really sensitive. I get optic migraines.
Oh no.
So those 3D things are like, whoa.
Well, it looks really cool in all the pictures. I guess in real life, it only looks good if you make your bed. So there's the challenge I'm gonna have. I never make my bed, but I think it'd be fun to make.
Definitely. So what are you working on right now?
Well, what I'm working on right now is so all the bag patterns that I showed you. For a while, I had them published as PDFs, which is just downloadable patterns because I sort of wanted to try them out to see how people like them before I committed to printing them because printing, as you know, is very expensive. And so I had them at fatquartershop.com for a while, and they seem to be doing really well. People like them and getting a lot of positive feedback. I also have the digital ones on my mysofun.com site, and people have been sending me pictures of stuff they made. One lady even made a quilt of all of them, and she bought all of the patterns and made a quilt of each of the little Halloween faces. It was the cutest thing. And so now I'm working on making paper versions of those, and we're actually printing them up as we speak over the next few days, and putting them up in the store and getting those out to the distributors and getting them into actual quilt stores. Um, I think the fun part is, I like having like the digital patterns and everything because they're easy and people can download them, but I don't know about you, but I'm not like an internet marketing expert, so I have my website, I maintain it, so I have a place to have my stuff, but I'm not like super good at like social media and all that stuff. So I like to send my patterns out to the quilt stores. People can see them in real life, they can pick them up, they can look at the back, and they can see the other pictures and like the fabric requirements and stuff. And I think there's just something cool about holding it in your hand that makes you really want to make it. So I'm looking forward to getting those out.
So do you have a favorite color palette that you like to work with?
Favorite palette? Oh, that's a tough one.
Favorite color.
I don't really know. I mean, not really, but I guess I would say that I tend really towards like the bright colors, because I'm a cartoonist, so I like those bright colors and I like to use a lot of complementary colors like, purple and yellow or orange and blue or something like that. So just like the really bright colors, I think are my favorites. Um, I'm trying to get more diverse as I grow as a quilter and try to move away from that. But I keep finding myself tending towards like the really electric colors. I think they're just really fun and cartoony.
Yeah,
So
I'm the same way. I like a lot of contrast, a lot of bright colors.
yeah, so I'll definitely need to start, looking at other types of palettes and stuff, but I haven't really gotten there yet.
Well, I've noticed that you like blue, well, in the couple of quilts that you showed, and then the one right behind you. You want to show us the one right behind you?
Oh, okay. So, so this is another quilt that I designed. I'm going to take a step back to see if you can see it.
It's so cute.
So basically, this is a sandcastle quilt, and I'll zoom in so you can see the block. See, it's just a little sandcastle, and the sandcastle is actually based on the house block that I'm sure or sometimes they call it the schoolhouse block. So basically, it's a schoolhouse block with a different type of top, okay, with a little sandcastle block top. And this is another pattern that I designed, and this goes with the beach ball that I already showed you. So this is a really fun, like you could make it as a gift for somebody, the beach ball and the quilt. It could be a crib quilt, it could be a beach blanket, it could be like a play mat, it could be all kinds of things. And this quilt, might look like it's a pain in the neck, like, oh, who wants to cut all those little tiny squares? But remember I told you that my first quilting book that I bought was the Eleanor Burns Quilt in a Day book, and she does everything like as a big strip and then you whack it up, right? So the top here, where you see these 5 squares, it's not 5 2.5-inch squares, because who wants to cut out like 5 times 9, that's 45 little squares. Who wants to cut that out? I sure don't, right? So all you do is sew together these 5 strips, like you do the width of the fabric in 2.5 inches, So tan, blue, tan, blue, tan, and then sew them all together like a big flag, and then you just chop them into the 2.5-inch segments.
There you
And so
go.
that makes it really easy because, I don't have a lot of time. So, I want to do stuff quickly and efficiently, as I'm sure everyone else does.
Mhm.
So that makes it really easy. And in that pattern, there's a lot of other fun, like strip piecing techniques that help you get those 9 blocks put together. And you really can just zip them all together in an afternoon. And, if you're making a baby gift, I don't know about you, but I'm always doing it at the last minute. So having it something easy is very beneficial.
Yeah, those 6 months where they do an announcement until the baby's born, it's real short.
Yeah, they really need to give the quilters more time. I mean, it could they plan ahead a little, maybe. So that's
My
another pattern that we're working on, getting it printed up and having a paper version of it as well. There's a digital version of it, but we're working on the paper version too.
like my son fell in love with the sand when we went to the beach for that family reunion. He just loved it, and they learned about it in preschool. And he came home for his birthday, and we asked him, "What do you want to do for for your birthday?" And he said he wanted to go to the beach.
Oh,
Well,
fun.
we're in Arizona.
Well, you do have sand though, so I
There's
guess you can.
sand. So I'm like, well, the ocean's too far away. Oh, he said ocean. I'm sorry, not beach. He said ocean. So I said, well, the ocean's too far away, but we could go to a lake. And he was like, oh, yes, like he was so excited. And I know he would absolutely love that quilt.
Well, it's very easy and it's just 9 blocks. I mean, you could make a toddler size. You could add another row and make it like 3 by 4 blocks. But yeah, I at the time I made this quilt, I actually designed this quilt a long time ago. I remember there was a meme that was popular with a little baby and he was like holding some sand in his hand. And I can't remember what the joke from the meme was, but I remember thinking that he was so cute, and that actually gave me the idea to make the sandcastle quilt. I don't even remember what the meme said, to tell you the truth, but I just remember a little baby holding sand and saying like, "I hate sandcastles" or something like that. I don't know, but so
Inspiration
I think my
everywhere.
my stuffed animal days crept in by, I just couldn't get a. I'm like, oh, it'd be so cute if it had a ball too, and so I couldn't just make the quilt. I had to make a ball too, and before I was telling you about stuffed animals, now you only have to learn a few things, and one of them is how to make a circle, right? Well, here's a tip on how to make it really round. Like, did you notice how round it is? Like, normally when you make something round and you stuff it, it looks wrinkly. I don't know
Yeah,
if you ever made like a teddy bear or a doll, but when you stuff the head, it always looks wrinkly, and that's so annoying, right?
yeah.
Well, here's a simple tip. The way that you make it super round is this piece, you just cut it on the bias. That's all you do. So you cut it like, let me see if I can do this, like at a 45-degree angle. Yeah, a 45-degree angle. Okay. So instead of cutting the piece straight up and down, cut it at a 45-degree angle so it's on the bias and the piece is stretchy. And then when you sew it in the circle and then stuff it, it stuffs out perfectly round. So that's how you make a perfect ball, is cut the strips on the bias. If you cut them the other way, they're going to do that wrinkly thing and it looks like a little alligator, it looks ugly.
Yeah.
But so that is how you make a perfect circle.
I'm
And
literally
then we have,
writing it down.
I'll send you the pattern so you can try it. It's really easy. There's just 8 little pieces. And then there's another fun baby pattern that there's this little ball. I don't know if you can see this.
Cute.
So it's a little ball and it's made out of these little pie-shaped wedges, right? And this little puzzle ball has lots of different names. In some places online it's called the Amish puzzle ball. It's kind of an old pattern. And my mom used to always make this as a gift for whenever anybody she knew had a baby. And when my son was a baby, I said, "Oh, I definitely want to make one." And I couldn't figure out the math for how to make it look all 3D like this. And I finally figured it out. And I said, it took me forever to figure this out. I bet somebody else wants to know how to do this too. So I actually made it into a pattern. This is actually our first pattern, and it continues to be like a really good seller today. It's called the Baby Puzzle Ball. And here's a little blue one, which you might be able to see better, blue and orange.
Yeah.
See, and the thing that's neat about it is it's a ball, but it's not round, so it won't roll away. So then the baby's playing with it, and they can't really crawl or move or anything. They can still reach it, and they can grab onto it, and it won't roll away because these little triangle sections stop it from rolling. It's kind of like a dice, like a D&D dice, And It's really easy and fun, and it does the same thing. You cut the little wedges on the bias, and actually, I cheat when I cut them. I use the rotary cutter to cut out squares, and then I just put the little pattern piece on the square, and it just falls right into the diagonal of the square. Makes it really
Mhm.
easy to cut them out. And you can make one of these in like 2 hours. So if you've got a baby shower to go to, you can make one of these. It's really fun. And this has a really cute story. Well, I don't know if it's cute, but it's kind of sweet. It's sad too.
Oh,
But I got a note from a customer that said that she had a baby, and a little girl, and they were like around 4, so they weren't a baby, they were a small child. They were around 4 or so, but they were totally nonverbal. They had some illness which I don't recall what it was, but they couldn't speak, and they were probably never going to speak. And she said that she made one of these for the little girl, and she gave it to her, and the little girl like laughed and like made an audible sound, like laughed, and her face lit up and everything. And she didn't usually do that. And she said she was so touched by it. She sent me a letter to tell me about it, and I was like, oh, I can't believe it. And I'll never forget that. That this really brought a little kid a lot of joy, and not just the little kid, but also the mom who made it, or maybe it was the grandma, I can't remember. I thought that was a really sweet story. So it's a fun little project, and it looks really cute in these are all those 30s reproduction prints. They're super popular. It's really cute because those ones, the prints are really small, so you
mhm.
can see the little characters. Like this one's kittens and letters. So that's something that's nice about the reproduction prints, is the print is so tiny, it shows up on
Yeah,
the ball. So that's another so fun thing.
I really like that. That'd make a great baby gift.
It does. It's really fun. And I used to make them when I first came up with that pattern. I was super into doing craft fairs, and so I'd make like a dozen of them before a craft fair, and I would sell the completed toy instead of just the pattern. It was a huge hit, and eventually I just got so overwhelmed with making them, I had to stop. I said, I can't make anymore.
I can see that. I got that way with masks.
Yeah, I started making masks, and I just made them for some friends and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'm done with this. And some people made thousands of them, and I don't know how they did it, because it was so repetitive.
Yeah, I
I
made
couldn't do it.
998.
Oh my gosh! Why did you make two more?
I couldn't.
You could have made two more
I
after
couldn't.
998. Well, so now you know what I mean, though, about the burnout, right?
I was
I think you
done.
should make two more right now, just so you can say you made 1,000.
I should.
Or maybe
Maybe I will.
998 is actually more meaningful. I mean, it's more memorable.
It is.
So,
It sticks in my head. 990. I just couldn't make another one. I was done.
oh. Well, you did a good deed, though. You helped 998 people,
I hope so. I mean, that's
and
why I
that's a
did it.
lot.
Yeah. It was for donations. I used up my stash. I had a lot of people donating just whatever they could, and it helped me, make them all and get that elastic in, because I don't know if you remember, elastic was like nowhere.
Oh yeah, you couldn't find Alaska anywhere. Couldn't find it anywhere. That was crazy.
It was crazy. It was crazy. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep going. So, what is your favorite quilting tool?
My favorite quilting tool is my vintage sewing machine, my Singer 301A. I have a vintage sewing machine from, I don't know if this counts. Of course, it's a tool. It's a machine, but it's still a tool.
Power tool.
It's from 1957, and it's tan. And it's whenever you see a sewing machine in my By the Yard comic, there's always a little tan sewing machine. That's it, my 301A. And it came out before they had zigzag, so it only does two things. It goes forward and backwards, and that's it.
I
And the thing, the
have the
thing I
same
love
machine.
about it, what?
I
What?
think we might have the same machine.
You do?
I think so.
Is it tan?
Yes.
And it has a little gold emblem on the side, and it has the number 301A.
I,
Oh
oh,
my
I don't know the
gosh!
number because it's one of the little prongs is broken to bring it back up on the sewing machine. So that's where I put my computer.
Oh, well, you got to get that later. Take a picture of it and send it to me,
I
and
will.
let me know. Well, I can show you. Wait, I'll show you mine. You tell me if this is it. Hold on.
Okay. The more you
Yeah.
describe it, the more I'm like, I think I have the same one.
So one of the things I told you I like about it is it's light. See, it's only 15 pounds. So is it this?
I think so.
Oh my gosh.
Like, oh, I can't get it. My computer's out, but I think so.
All
I
right, well,
think
you
that
can show
might
me
be it.
later. So,
It's the same color.
well, it probably is. Well, anyways, I love this little gal. As you can see, only 15 pounds. And it's made of all aluminum. And the reason why I love it is because it's all mechanical. There's nothing computerized on it. It's all mechanical. And because of that, the stitch is perfect every single time. It's perfectly straight. The stitches are all of uniform length because there's no computer control anything. And, I got my first degree in mechanical engineering. So this really warms my heart because this is a piece of beautiful machinery. And I love it. I have 5 of them because my crazy weird boyfriend, I showed him this machine. This is the guy who likes the model trains. So of course, when I showed him this, he lost his mind. He loved it. And he's like, well, what do you do if it breaks down or needs parts? I said, I go without them because, it's from 1957. He's like, you should really go online and buy some old ones. So he went online and bought 4 of them that were like junk, so that he could, so we could use them for parts. And at first I laughed at him until finally the bobbin case for this one just kind of died. And even though it's all adjustable and everything, I couldn't get it to work right. I think it was just worn out. There's a little spring in it, and it just wasn't working anymore. So I swapped it out for one of the other bobbin cases. And after that, I never laughed at him for buying 5 sewing machines again. But well, actually, he bought 4 because I had this one. But anyways, I love her. So that's my favorite tool.
Thank you for sharing. So what is your favorite part of the quilting process?
Favorite part of the quilting process? I don't know. Obviously there's a lot of steps and everything, and you kind of have to be enthusiastic about most of them if you want to keep going. But I mean, probably like the design process is probably the most fun. Is sitting down with. I just sit down with graph paper. I know there's a lot of programs like EQ, electronic quilt, and stuff like that. I've never used it. I just don't want to because, I use computers for my day job all the time, and I really appreciate like being able to draw with my hands and do things on graph paper. I know that computers are more efficient, but I think they also stifle your creativity because you're trying to figure out, well, how do I get the computer to do X, Y, Z? But if you can just do it with your hand, you're completely unencumbered by technology. So I think this is the design process, and harkening back to the cartooning and everything, I have a huge box of colored pencils, and so I will actually just draw out a quilt on graph paper with colored pencils and start coloring in the squares and everything and trying different things. And I'll draw the same thing like 20 times with like different colors or different configurations or whatever. And then I keep all this stuff in these big notebooks. And then once I settle on a design, then of course I do use software to write it up. I don't even use electronic quilt. I use CorelDRAW, which is a drawing program that is sort of akin to Adobe Illustrator, only it's a different vendor. It's Corel instead of Adobe, but it's basically similar to Adobe Illustrator. It's a vector-based drawing package. So then I draw it all up and write the directions and all that stuff. So, and I always tell people that, for many years I was a software developer, and now I do this. I design patterns, and people think that's really different. And interestingly, it's actually not really different, because both software development and pattern development have, a design phase. And a lot of times the video game and the software developers are, designing, on paper or on the whiteboard or whatever. And then there's a prototyping process, where you stitch up your first version of it and say, this has potential. And there's always a prototyping phase of software. And then there's the actual development part, which is a hard part, writing it all out. And then there's one really critical thing that's similar between software and pattern development, which a lot of pattern designers forget. And this thing is called testing. Just because you made what you think is the greatest pattern in the world, it doesn't mean anything if it can't be replicated by others, right? And that's where testing comes in. And I use paid testers for all my pattern development. So I don't just say, well, it looks good to me. I take my pattern, I give it to someone who's a stranger. I meet these people on the internet, and I mail it to them, and I send them a list of directions on what I want them to do. And basically, I say, make this. I'm not going to give you any help. Just make it. And you tell me if it's good or not. And like, if there's something that's missing or something that you don't understand, circle it in red and let me know and give me your feedback. And you get so much useful feedback. Like, you think that you've made a great pattern that's so obvious to you because you're more skilled. And then a lot of people are, beginning sewers who are using my pattern. So I have to assume that they might not know what some of these terms are. And I get a lot of really useful feedback that way. And I incorporate that back into my designs. And then only after I get tester feedback from at least 3 people will I actually put out a pattern. And I'm happy to say that I started designing patterns in 2009. And I took a few years off in the middle because I was working a regular job, and now I'm doing patterns again. But over that period of time, I've never done a reprint ever. So I've never had to print a reprint because of a mistake. Like, a lot of patterns are like, oh, well, you see our Facebook page for updates or whatever. And I think that's terrible, because what if you don't see that and you're trying to make something and it's not working and you don't see the correction was on the author's website?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy that I haven't had to print a reprint yet. I mean, sure, someday I will, but I haven't yet. And I think that's all because of testing. And testing is also what makes software come out right. And all you software developers out there, listen to me. A lot of software doesn't work very well because it's not well tested. So anyways, that's all I have to say about testing.
Make sure you get your tested.
Yes.
Patterns tested.
Well,
I had this pattern tested, and it was invaluable. I basically just did I don't know if you can see it, sunshine, like a sunshine race.
Yes.
Kind of like a sunset back there. And I sent that out, and I got such great feedback. I actually ended up adding in an option to applique the half circle instead of piecing it. Because I had so many people requesting that, and I had the thought, but I figured I had to go with either one, paper piecing or
yeah. So did you end up using both, or did you
I
pick
did both.
one?
I just threw both in there. I was like, here, you have options. Whatever you'd like to try. I think that's
important, because some people are not into paper piecing. Like, I don't even know how to do it. So I would definitely not do that one. So that's a good idea.
With the testing, it's invaluable. Okay, so who do you make your quilts for?
Who do I make them for? Well, I made some for my kids, obviously. Mostly they're big now, so mostly I just make them for so fun and for gifts, when people have babies and stuff. So I don't have a lot of quilts that I made that I've kept for myself, because after a while your house gets totally full of quilts. So I try to make them as gifts. Or I make them as the pattern models, and then the pattern models, you send them all around, like you send them to right now, Checker Distributors is one of my distributors, and they do this cool thing every other week. I think it's every other Wednesday. They do it on their Facebook page. They show off all their new stuff, and they have one of their employees does a video just like we're doing now, and they go through all the products, and it takes like an hour and a half. And so a lot of my patterns get sent out to see different people, like to be on that video, or be in a quilt store. They'll keep it for a while they're selling the pattern or something like that. So I sort of, they travel more than me. Kind of disappointing, actually.
Is that nerve-wracking to send your quilt out like that?
Yes, because things get lost in the mail. It's definitely nerve-wracking. And they say they'll send it back to you, but sometimes you never see it again. And it's pretty disappointing, especially like the sandcastle one. Some of the fabric is out of print, so if it got lost, I could never make it again. So, and I've had to do that. Things have been lost in the mail, or what happens is they bring them to the quilt market, which is a big trade show. There's a spring one and a fall one, and some of the distributors will bring your models to the quilt market to help sell your patterns, and then stuff never comes home from quilt market. That's what happened actually to the ball that goes to the sandcastle quilt. It got lost, but luckily I found some of the fabric that I made it with, and the other ones I just found fabrics that were close enough. so I could make a new one.
Yeah, it's disappointing when they get lost.
Well, they try, but you know, it's a huge, huge event, and you can't blame them because they're keeping track of like a million things,
Yeah, it's
and
true.
they have to ship everything there and ship it back, and but you know, it's okay because they're doing me a valuable service by showing the stuff in the first place. So if every now and then something gets lost, whatever, it's not that terrible.
That is true in a bigger picture. It's true.
Yeah, and a lot of the quilts that I've made for people, what I'll do is I'll make one extra block. You know, I try to make like a 12-inch block or 14-inch block for the quilts. I typically make quilts that are block based, and I don't really do a lot of like modern stuff that's not block based. And I've kept a block from every quilt that I've made as a gift. And so then someday I'll sew them all together, and I'll have this really cute memory quilt of all the quilts that I made for people. And it's been a long process. I mean, it's been 17 years now, and I don't have enough to make a quilt that's big enough for me because I'm an adult. But someday I will, and I think it'd be a really neat thing to look back on all the quilts you made over the years.
Yeah, that's a beautiful idea. I really like that.
And somehow I got this crazy idea. I think it was by accident when I made the first quilt that it was only supposed to have 9 blocks, and for some reason I came up with 10. I had enough fabric to make 10 blocks, and I was like, oh, it's so cute. I'll just keep this one. Or maybe I'll make it into a pillow or something. And then the second quilt, I said, well, I wonder if I can squeeze one more block out. And so then it became sort of a thing that sort of happened accidentally because of the first quilt.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm piecing, I'll just keep making them and I'll end up making more than I need.
Yep.
You just keep going.
Well, it's hard to stop, you know, once you're
Yeah.
on a roll.
Well, that's a beautiful idea, saving a block from all the gifts and putting it together. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. It'll look weird because all the colors won't match, but that's okay.
So, what was your worst quilting experience?
My worst quilting experience. Well, I would definitely have to say my most challenging quilting experience was, you know, once word hits the street that you're a quilter, projects come to you, you know, and my sister-in-law sent me this much loved quilt from her son. And she called me up and she said, you know, her son by then he was like 16 or something. So he's long since outgrown it, but it was his baby quilt. And she said, you know, my son had this quilt as a baby and it got really wrecked, and I'd really like to have it sewn up so I could save it as a keepsake for him, or maybe as a gift for his child if he ever has a child. And of course I said sure, and in my mind I envisioned like a few holes or something like that, right? She sent me this thing and it looked like it had been attacked by a Rottweiler. Okay,
Oh,
it was just completely shredded. And she said she wanted me to fix it. I'm like, what do you want? The only thing I can do is euthanize this thing, you know? It was such a mess. And and she was making such a big deal about how she wanted it as a keepsake, you know, because he was her only child and he was almost ready to graduate from high school and she was feeling all sentimental. And of course I agreed to do it. And then when I saw what a mess it was, I regretted it instantly. And I just wanted to send it back to her and say no. But I already said yes. So to make a long story short, it could not be saved. Okay, so, but about half of it could. So what I ended up doing is cutting it in half and then using the pieces from the part that I cut off that was basically too shredded to fix, using what I could find from that to fix the other half. So I basically made her half a quilt that was, oh, somebody just got home, so I was wondering what that noise was. I basically made half a quilt out of it, and it turned out super cute, and it looked pretty good, you know, by the time I sewed it back together. And she called me up in tears. It's beautiful. She was very happy. And but
yeah,
now
from
I have
shredded to functional, I can see her being
yes, it
happy.
was shredded. So it wasn't a quilt anymore. It couldn't be used as a quilt because it was only about, you know, 3 feet long by 2 feet wide by the time I saved it. But it was at least it could be like a little huggy blanket or a keepsake or something.
Yeah. Well, we have two questions left. So the almost last one is, do you have a professional tip for our quilters out there?
A professional tip for you quilters out there. Um,
Or any tip really, because you're a professional.
a professional tip. I don't. I don't know if it's a pro tip or not, but one of the things that I do is it's so easy, but it's like totally changed my life. Is you know, a lot of people have like when you're quilting, it's popular to use the 1/4 inch seam, right? And a lot of people have like the presser foot that's the 1/4 inch, right? But I still find that hard to do because a lot of them are clear, which is hard to use, and then or they're silver or whatever. And but basically, my eyesight is terrible, you know. So what I did, and this was actually a tip that my boyfriend gave me because he's a woodworker, and he took a piece of painter's tape, you know, that blue tape, and he put it right on the sewing machine on the 1/4 inch line, and best thing ever because number one, it's not that sticky, so you can take it off. It won't ruin your sewing machine, and it's a giant blue line, you know. So one of the problems I was having was that because I can't see that well anymore, and is that just trying to keep that 1/4 inch seam really consistent, and just measuring it off of that tiny little foot, you've only got this much space to align it, and you're sort of wiggling back and forth. But if you have a giant blue line across your sewing machine, it's really easy to line it up and get like a really nice 1/4 inch seam. And then later, if you're sewing something else, it's just painter's tape, just take it off. So so that's definitely a pro tip. But I'll give you one of his pro tips because, again, he's a woodworker and a model train enthusiast. So he sees me struggling to do stuff and he's always got a better way. And one of the things is, you know, cutting those 2.5 inch strips. You know, you got to cut about 1 billion of them for a project. And so what he did is he just came up from the shop and he got those woodworkers clamps. You know, they're metal and they look like an A and they've got little rubber handles. You can buy them at Home Depot for $1. And he just took that and like clamp and he clamped the ruler to the table. And so now no matter what, the ruler isn't going to move, right? And
Yeah.
so I have two 2.5 inch rulers. So he'd clamp one of them so you can make one cut. And then you can take the other ruler, put it down against the first ruler, make another cut, and then you put the clamps on that one, and you just keep moving the rulers up by one. So you have two rulers, and you just keep moving them one after another, and you can cut up a whole piece of fabric in like 5 minutes. It's amazing. So definitely wood shop clamps for your rulers, because
Good
don't
job.
you hate it when you're pushing down really hard and you're trying to go the whole length of the fabric, and then the last minute you slip and it's off, the last 10 inches is wrong. Now they do make rulers that have like a grippy back, and those definitely work good, but when you only have a 2.5 inch ruler, it doesn't have a lot of surface area,
Yeah.
you know. So even if it has the grippy back, and the grippy back doesn't always work, like the rulers eventually get ungrippy. So the wood shop clamps, that thing's not going anywhere. So
It's a great
that's
piece of
my
advice. You know what I also
pro
get
tip.
from that is to involve your significant other and see if they have any ideas.
You never know because you know, he cuts a lot of wood, and when you're making something, like he used to build houses, so he had to cut like 1,000 stair railings the same length, you know. So he had all kinds of tips for trying to make it all easier, you know, just try to make things easier and faster. And a lot of my cutting tips come from him. One time I was, this is not related to quilting, but it's a similar story. I got really into rug hooking for a while. Oh my
Oh,
God, so addicting. Rug hooking, love it. And rug hooking is worse than quilting because instead of 2.5 inch strips, you have to cut 1/4 inch strips of wool, right? And wool is thick and squishy and hard to cut, right? You try to cut a 1/4 inch strip of 1/4 inch strip of wool sometime and tell me how hard it is. And the
it would
and
be
so he
hard.
figured out that like there's a certain nut that's like a size 8 nut or something like that that's exactly a 1/4 inch wide. So he would take these nuts and put them on the cutting table and then put the ruler up against them and it make an exact 1/4 inch. And so then if you take like 9 nuts and line them all up and you cut one, take two of the nuts away, cut another, take two of the nuts away, cut another, take two of the nuts away. You could cut 10 strips in like 2 minutes.
Nice.
So anyways, that was another fun cutting tip because cutting is the boring part. You know, you just want to, whether it's rug hooking or quilting, cutting is boring. You just want to get the fabric cut up so you can start putting it together, which is the fun part. So anything you can do to make cutting faster is a win.
It's true. It's very true. Thank you for sharing those, and the ones from your husband too, or your I should just say significant other.
Yes. So, but train guy, we just call him train guy.
Yeah, train guy. I like that.
So
So our last question is, where can we find more information about you or keep in touch with you?
Well, thanks for asking. Well, the two things we talked about today is the quilting comics. Those are on my website, bytheyardcomics.com. They're also on Facebook and Instagram, also By the Yard Comics, all one word. And then my sewing patterns, everything is on sewfun.com, my website. We can find my patterns. And my Instagram and Facebooks are Sew Fun Patterns, because Sew Fun was taken by somebody else. So Sew Fun Patterns on Facebook and Sew Fun Patterns on Instagram. And
Okay.
Etsy too, I guess. I'm Sew Fun Patterns on Etsy as well.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Jennifer.
Well, thanks for having me. It was really fun talking about quilting and comics and old sewing machines
Yeah,
and sewing patterns and everything. So
I'm
thanks a
gonna
lot
get
for having me.
get a picture.
Well, just later send me a picture and we can compare notes.
Yeah,
So it's probably still usable.
it
If
is.
you,
It is. It's a powerhouse. It's an amazing machine. It just tends to eat flannel, which is why I gotta. It's my table's broken, so my machine's not next to me. Usually my machine's right here, but the leg fell off, so it's just balanced right now just to hold a couple things while
oh
I
no.
get some time to go to Home Depot. But yeah, it's on the floor. It's kind of sad. It just makes me sad that it's on the floor and I can't use it right now.
Well,
But yeah,
it'll get fixed soon.
I might have to just open this one up and use it. So.
Sounds like a plan. So I look forward to seeing your other videos. I'm definitely going to check out the other entries in your series. It sounds like a really great way to meet quilters and learn more about what they're doing and just learning about the industry in general. It's a really huge hobby that a lot of people are involved in, and there's so much going on. So there's something new to learn every day. So,
I think so too. I've learned several things just from our interview.
well, that's great. I'm glad it could be somewhat useful.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Well, you too. Thank you very much, and we'll keep in touch. Thanks,
Bye.
Tori.